Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediation and Beyond YouTube channel. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today, I am honored to have my colleague and friend, Gabrielle Hartley. I'm just going to read a little bit about Gabrielle here because it's quite an impressive resume here. So just bear with me while I read because I don't want to miss anything, and then you'll understand who I'm dealing with today. So Gabrielle is an attorney. She's a leading divorce attorney, online mediator, divorce strategy coach, and the creator of the Better Apart method, which we will get to. She helps clients strategically move through and beyond divorce and trains professionals to infuse positivity and clarity into their divorce process. She authored Better Apart, the radically positively way to separate by Harper & Collins in 2019. It's the book you'll see right behind me, and it's something we are going to get into today. Better Apart is the first book of its kind to combine the life-changing healing wisdom of mindfulness, meditation, and yoga with practical advice and legal wisdom to get the reader through and beyond the divorce process. And that and beyond part is really important. Gabrielle is a frequent expert on a national media platform. Her work has been endorsed by Gwyneth Paltrow, we know Gwyneth with Goop, and was named the Conscious Uncoupling How-To by People magazine. She's been featured throughout the media channels, including New York Times, U.S. News and World Report, Vice, the New York Post, Yoga Journal Vice, Mind Body Green, Thrive Global, the Hampshire Gazette, and the Brian Lehrer Show. She's a regular expert guest and blogger featured on NBC television and radio, as well as dozens of podcasts and blogs around the world. So Gabrielle, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Nice to be here with you today.
Yes, I'm super excited to have you. So, and I know you're busy. Obviously, you're doing a lot around the area of divorce and getting out there. So let me just first ask, because I met you back in, I think, right before COVID, and I purchased your book from you, and I loved the Better Apart book. I love it. Can you tell me why you even wrote that?
Yeah, absolutely. My backstory is I grew up with parents who divorced in the late 70s, early 80s, and they actually did it very well. My parents, I grew up with shared custody, so I changed houses every day with alternating weekends from when I was 9 years old until I grew up, together with my younger brother. And while their divorce wasn't as wonderful as they might have made it out to be, they were very proud that they were like really great divorcees or whatever. It wasn't until I worked for Judge Sunshine in New York State Court that I realized how horrible the divorce process could be, how lonely it could be, which I think it probably also was for my parents, but also how the whole situation can spiral out of control and can also leave you feeling depressed, full of shame, and just feel alone in the process. So after many years of thinking about what I could do to help people who, quite frankly, couldn't afford to work with me one-to-one, or who I just didn't have contact with, I wanted to provide almost like a companion, a friend, in the form of a book. And so the process, the Better Apart method is something that I had created separate and apart from the book. And then the book basically brings forward the practices and then infuses it into, once you are firmly rooted in your own ability to move forward, how do you bring that into your financial decisions? How do you bring that into the divorce process? How do you navigate co-parenting and all the ins and outs? How do you pick a lawyer? How do you know when it's time to call it quits? How can you tell when the friendship you've had of 30 years, is this person really not your friend, or do they just have a hard time showing up for you during this transition, which happens very frequently. And we talk a lot about putting people on a shelf rather than throwing them away. So I wrote the book really as a gift to the world, is sort of how I thought about it. It's ever since it came out, it's funny that you use the word mission, because I do feel like I'm like a positive divorce missionary.
Yep.
I personally did not like it when people said I was from a broken home. That I think is really damaging. I didn't view my home as broken. I viewed it as transformed, although I will say that I do have a very strong memory of being at my dad's house. So my dad had a house, my mom had a house, my dad had a girlfriend's family move in, and the girlfriend's daughter got like the good room and I got the bad room, right? And I was really mad. I was like, this is your house. Why do I have the bad room? And he was like, she lives here all the time. You're only here half the time. We figured it was fair. And I said, I'm actually only anywhere half the time. Like, so do I not really exist, right? So there's the internal narrative, which is informed by the external narrative. There's just so much to grapple with. And I just wanted to give advice based on my personal experience and my 25 years of real life divorce, lawyering, mediating, and strategic coaching experience, and let people know you're not alone. You can get through this. You can move beyond it. It will be truly your last chapter as you move forward into the next.
Did you, like, is it, no, it doesn't, obviously, is it ironic that you just happened to go into the matrimonial law field?
It is really funny.
Or,
yes.
or you know what I mean? Like, does your past, you know?
So yeah, like that's a really good question. And people, you know, I do a lot of shows and they don't ask that all the time, but I think about that a lot because you should know. So I went to Cornell undergrad and then I went to Brooklyn Law School. And in Brooklyn, you're allowed to take, well, when I went a million years ago, you were allowed to take one class, pass, fail. And I took like corporate taxation for a grade. I took like all these hard classes for a grade, but I was so done with divorce that I took that. It was required. I took a pass fail. I was like, I hate this class. I like the teacher a lot. I hardly study. Like I wasn't into it. I was very annoyed by a lot of the input that some of my, you know, well-meaning 22-year-old classmates who weren't divorced they were 22. Their parents weren't divorced. And yeah, it was too close to home. So what happened was I had a law practice on Court Street in downtown Brooklyn, and I was ready to move on. And I was thinking of going into like .com world, which was blowing up, and then it blew up. And a friend and colleague of mine who was exclusively a divorce lawyer told me that there was this divorce lawyer, divorce court judge, who was Judge Sunshine, who was looking for somebody. And I said, okay, you know, I've done divorces. I like that. You know, years had gone by. And so I fell into the job, really. Like he interviewed me, I got the job. And what wound up happening is I didn't just fall into it and lollygag. I loved it. Like I was so good at resolving cases. Like it was like my magic power, right? So I started to clerk for him about 21 years ago. And I worked for him for a few years before I got married and opened my law and mediation practice. Mm-hmm. And so I just felt like no case too big or too small. And I got like an incredible amount of positive feedback from the lawyers, from the litigants, you know, and my judge had so much pressure because we were only, for a period of time, he was the only judge in the whole borough of Staten Island. And I was his sidekick, right? So like we had to like resolve everything. My official title was not sidekick. It was court attorney. But so basically, I just loved it. And I thought then when I moved away and I got married and I opened my practice, I thought, well, maybe it's not that I'm so good at this, but I work for the judge, and people who saw me were like ready for trial. They were like geared up, right? But what happened was I had the same skill outside of that, you know, the courthouse. So yeah, it's just something that I love. And I always do say that I'm sure if my parents hadn't gotten divorced, I would have found something else that I was good at and I really enjoyed. But the narrative is something that has always bothered me, and something that I've been really attached to changing.
Right. So the narrative from being a young girl growing up with a divorced home, is that the narrative you're speaking to, or are you talking about the narrative in general for other, you know, in general about divorce?
I'm talking about the global divorce narrative. The disdain that you get from, you know, the smug marrieds, as they call it in what's the movie with Darcy's the guy, it's thrown, Renee Zellweger is in it.
Oh, this happened to me on another show.
Oh,
Where
what the
we
heck?
thought of the word afterward. It was curling, and she was making it. My friend was making an analogy to mediation and divorce with curling. So that's why we couldn't think of the word. I cannot think of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll think of it anyway.
Yeah. Yep. You will. So in your book, you paired up. You didn't just write a book. Like, you paired up with Elena Brower, who's a well-renowned yoga and meditation person. So why didn't you just write yourself? Why did you pair up with Elena? Like, how did you see that coming to play?
So while I've been practicing yoga and meditation forever, that's not my direct wheelhouse, right? And she, first of all, herself had a divorce that was very mindful, and she and her co-parent do very well together with their boy, who is now a young teen, and they split when he was about 4. And I reached out to her and I told her I was working on a project, and I asked her if she'd like to join and lend her expertise. And she was very excited about it. And and so we worked on it together.
So part of bringing her in, even to have that mindset, Gabrielle, would have been because you wanted to bring in that element of kind of meditation, mindfulness, calm energy into the divorce work.
That's exactly right. So I wanted to do a book that brought together mindfulness, yoga, and meditation and divorce.
Okay.
Because in yoga and in mindfulness, we learn a lot about feeling grounded, being at peace, being like fully knit together, internal and external integration of how we feel and how we are showing up, right? Originally, Better Apart was called Your Elegant Divorce. Oh,
okay. Gotcha. Which is an elegant divorce if you can do it mindfully, right? I mean, that's the idea.
And when you go through the 5 steps, what you're working on is learning to take space so that you can be responsive rather than reactive, right? Noticing the neutral. So, because we can build on positivity, right? When we're noticing the neutral, that's in the peace section. Clarity is all about stepping away from the blame and the shame and connecting with your own vision, right? Respect is about building forward, putting more energy on the things that serve you and walking away from the things that are not working for you. And then acceptance and forgiveness is about the knowing that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And I think that's the other piece that drove me to write Better Apart, was that it is so common to hear stories of people who have been divorced for 10, 20, 30, 40 years who are still pissed off that their spouse wasted all their money, cheated on them, how they were not treated properly, didn't respect them. I mean, I would say about all that, you notice it, you feel it, you process it, and then you let it go. Only because you only have a certain amount of mental space, right? It's not because the person deserves forgiveness or that you shouldn't be angry, but because we only have a certain amount of mental energy, if we're spending all of our energy focusing on the negative, we can't actually move forward. Right. And that's why I have something on my site called the Better Apart blog, which, there's a whole section on wellness. And I have a lot of people who are writing who talk about emotional wellness, physical wellness, diet, exercise.
Yes.
And all of that stuff. Oh, by the way, Renee Zellweger, Bridget Jones' Diary. That's what I couldn't.
Oh, that's it. Those are great.
Sorry. Yeah, those are great movies. I love them. Right. The Smug Marrieds. That's what she called.
Smug Marrieds. I forgot about that.
Marrieds exist when you're getting divorced and also when you're single.
Right. Absolutely. They do. And I always say, like, the word co-parenting for me is always like, you co-parent when you're married and you co-parent when you're divorced. Like, sometimes these words, like, they're
and by the way, you parallel parent when you're married and you parallel parent.
Absolutely. You do both. Yes. It's not always that smooth ride, is it?
not. I mean, we're people, and we marry people who, or we couple with people who we have an innate sense we belong with or would be a good match for us. But sometimes the match is not quite like this. It can be like this or like this, you know.
Yes.
And so, you know, a lot of the better part process is about getting control of your emotional self so that your mental, your thinking brain is engaged. You're going to make better decisions with an engaged thinking brain. And so, I mean, I know that for myself, right? Like if I'm just feeling frustrated or aggravated, I am not going to make as good choices. Whereas if I sit with my frustration for a period of time, and I noticed it, first of all, a lot of times it goes away. How many times have you like woken up, maybe this is just me, but you wake up in the middle of the night and something seems like a really big deal at 3 a.m, then you get back to sleep. And when you wake up again at like 7, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lost an hour of sleep over that nonsense.
Right. It's so true. Or you even forgot that you woke up about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it can just pass.
That's right. And that's the same thing. Even the things that seem like big deals with our kids, a lot of them are not such big deals, like in retrospect. So there's this word, this sense of knowing, right? That's like a very yogic word.
Yeah.
There's a knowing that if you can hold on to that sense through the hard times, it will help you to get through. You are your own best teacher. That's why I have, if you go to GabrielleHartley.com, I have a 6-week self-guided course, which is videos that you get, and after each video you get in your inbox a exercise, right? That is like a companion to the video, and it will start priming you to start thinking about things through the lens of patience, respect, peace, clarity, and forgiveness. And when you do that course, then you get like a complimentary, like a mini session with me to help launch your strategy forward. You know, some people then hire me to work as their coach, but again, like my cost for that is it's very expensive. So, but the course itself is cheap. And I did that on purpose because I know how much people need support, right? So if you do the course, you read the book, and then you have a question, okay, Gabrielle, that sounds really good, but here's my real problem. And how the heck am I going to address that problem using these methods? Because I can't, because I feel like I'm choking, I'm suffocating, I'm caught in a storm, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating. What can I do? And so the way that I can help is to figure out where to prioritize and what your best strategies are to move forward. And I can also actually hook you up. There's a lot of people who work one-to-one just on this emotional piece, and many of whom are trained in the Better Apart method as well.
I think that's, you know, I'm big on actionable items. And
yeah,
so
me too.
You have to have actionable items with a plan in order to see progress. Other than if you don't have that in place, it's really hard when you come from a traumatic experience like divorce to kind of just lift yourself up by the seat of your pants and move yourself forward. And you really do need that community, that team effort in order to get, and being part of a team could be a book could be part of your team,
well,
right?
That's the thing. Like that was the whole idea with the book, is that it's a team member, right? And the reason I made the course is because not everybody wants to read something cover to cover. And like, I just figured, you know, I have designated days where I take calls from people who do the course, and it's just like a way to start you on your path forward. And just like, I used to say, you know, like a long time ago, I had an office where there's somebody always sitting across from me all day, people in telling me their story, me sort of making an action plan with them. And I thought like, oh, what an interesting movie this would make. Just have like the 4-minute highlights with each client. Of course, you could never do that.
Right.
But then, you know, I took that another step forward and I was like, okay, well, what's the best insight I can give these people, right? Because there are themes that run through a lot of these different things. And there's a lot of divorce books that can also help you in different ways. Jacqueline Newman just came out with one called The New Rules of Divorce. And it's a very different book than Better Apart. But it's, you know, they complement one another. They're don't be afraid to reach out to professionals, reach out, and the one thing about therapists, I'm a very big believer in therapy. Like my whole family, I've got a lot of kids. I have 3 boys. We use therapists. We love therapists. My stepsister's a therapist. But I have coached a lot of therapists in the Better Part method. And I don't mean coach for themselves, but in implementing the method.
Sure.
And uniformly, I have heard that they don't really focus so much on clarity with their clients. And coaching usually involves a lot more clarity seeking. And because I think that venting and processing is all well and good. But if you keep rehearsing the negative narrative, that's all you're doing. You're rehearsing the negative narrative. And that becomes your life. As I said, you can only focus on one thing at a time. If you start shifting where you're putting your mental energy, your life will start shifting. So the Better Part method has really simple practices. I had somebody, I asked for like real feedback right at the end, and I do, intermittently calls, and I had one person say, my takeaway is I should breathe. Yeah. And she said it like really like it was a bad thing. And I was like, well, that is maybe what you need the most. Like there were a lot more takeaways than that, but that was hers. And maybe she didn't want to hear it, right? But later on, she has actually referred me a lot of clients. Like, I think when we processed it, she understood that oftentimes we're triggered by the things we don't like. When you have a person in your life who annoys you, sometimes it's worth taking a look and saying, why do they annoy me? What about me is feeding into that?
Absolutely. And, I was on a show the other day, and I said to the woman, sometimes even when your ex tells you something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
That's right.
That person probably knows you pretty well. They've been with you a while, and it doesn't mean they're right, but it definitely doesn't mean they're wrong. And you might want to pause and just question what they're saying. Like, maybe there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Right? I mean, my dream, 100%, like my dream during COVID, and this is because I'm like the eternal optimist, I guess, is that people are forced to work things out because they're stuck together. Of course, that's not really what happens with most people, but
I would love that.
But we have so much more time in a way to slow down, slow our kids down, slow our lives down, slow our dynamics down. I think part of the ruination of many of our dynamics is that we're thinking slowly and acting quickly, or maybe the other way around. We're too quick, and we're not we're doing all the time. We're running, right? And we are living in an age of immediacy, and we are impatient. And, sometimes you're with a partner who, obviously there's lots of people who are living with really adverse circumstances, but sometimes your partner might just be boring after 10 or 15 or 20 years, right? So what do you do with that? I mean, do you leave? I don't know. Like, I don't do should I stay or should I go work with people? There are some wonderful people who do that. There's a body of therapy called discernment therapy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think, like, to your question, why yoga, meditation, and Elena Brower? And I think it's because your thinking brain is necessary to make decisions about money, about kids, but your intuitive brain is going to help you lead to the right decisions. And your emotional brain, when it's dysregulated, is going to interfere with your intuition and with your thinking. And so Better Part is designed and curated to literally take down the charge. It has been very well vetted by multiple clinical psychologists. Although I am not a clinical psychologist, I'm like pretty nerdy, and I wanted to make sure that everything like made sense. I was like, this is what I think. Does this make sense? And yeah, so yeah, I feel I've had really great feedback, and I'm very proud of this as a legacy.
Well, I love this because it helps both the professionals. And when you were talking about therapists, I'm like, I always want people to go to a therapist who has divorce training. like who,
but
you
but
just
more
don't
than
go to anybody, right?
right, but also more than just, because sometimes, I mean, like, there is divorce training. Think about it. Who's doing the training?
Well,
right?
that was my other going to, right? So it's good to have programs like yourselves which are more concrete. People have been, there's the experience of it. You're blending not just the divorce part of it. You have that whole clarity and mindfulness and peace and regulating your emotions, right? So that you can actually use your cognition.
And the program that I do for therapists, it's very short, really. Like, the biggest program is 8 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
You can always continue to consult with me, but sort of my group, and I do small groups. You either do, 1 hour, 4 hours, or I think it's like 12 hours. And it gets you, I give continuing ed credits that are recognized by the ICF, anyone who's a trained coach. But for therapists and for coaches and even for mediators and lawyers, the Better Apart training just is another foundational method for you to pass on to your clients through your practice. And for coaches, what's been really nice is they can roll it out over a 5-month session. They do a whole so they spend 1 month on each of the different themes, and they roll it out in all different ways. And I'm very happy, they can do it with their own flavor. Everybody's different. I would tell you, if you're listening to this, make some calls, look at people's feeds, talk to them, see who works for you, because none of us are one size fits all, right? We all have different personalities, different energies that work with us. And it's the same, you'd find that if you're working with someone to do, your computer back end, your garden, your babysitter, your house cleaner, we all need different things,
Yeah,
I take pause on house cleaner, because with COVID, I haven't had my house cleaned in God knows how long.
But it's for individuals, professionals of all sorts, in terms of, like, really to help.
Well, it's 2 different things.
That's what I'm saying. You
can tell when you go on GabrielleHartley.com, you click in one place if you're a professional and another place if you're getting divorced.
Okay, perfect. So it's set up really simply.
It's set up simply. The blog is intended for people going through divorce, although professionals are more than welcome to go to it, look at it. There are nice budget sheets in there in the blog, which your clients might find useful.
Okay. And how do people get a hold of you? Like, so they go to GabrielleHartley.com?
Just go there. There's a message me. If it'll go right into my email. If you want my direct email, it's just Gabrielle@GabrielleHartley.com. But it's so super simple. You can follow me on all my social from there. You can contact me with any questions. I am also doing, in addition to the Better Apart method, I do online mediation nationally. If you're not in New York or Massachusetts, what I do is I help you arrive at a memorandum of understanding, and I bring you, and then I would shepherd you to help you to find a mediation-friendly attorney in your location to make sure that it conforms with everything that you need it to do.
For state laws, right? For
state laws, right? Yeah. And so, there's a whole suite of offerings that I have. And if I'm not your jam, find somebody else who is, who at least has the same intentions. And talk to other people and say, well, just because he or she is putting herself out there that way, is this person the real deal?
No, that's good advice.
You have to be very careful.
Well, I always say, divorce isn't like you get a do-over, right? I mean, you want to do it.
That's so important. That's so important, because, like, the judge I used to work for, he used to always say, like, 2 things. He used to say, you don't want the stranger in black robes. You don't want the stranger in black robes deciding your life. That was one thing.
Don't.
And the other thing is, like, you're going to create memories that you're never going to forget by the way your divorce rolls out.
Amen.
You want to show up as your best you, not for him, not for her, maybe for your kids, but also for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And do your divorce. Whatever that person's doing, you'll handle and you'll deal with it, but you be you and stay true to that. Stay true to who you are.
I love that. You do your divorce.
Yes.
Right? And as many times, just to circle back for a second on the noticing the neutral, anytime your ex does something that is good enough, say thank you.
Yeah.
Because it's going to build from there. Thank you for returning the kids' clothing. Thank you for showing up on time. Thank you for the $12.50 copay. Whatever it is, don't say it as a mockery. Say it as many times as you can, because we humans need to hear 8 to 12 positives in order to actually process a negative.
Yeah.
And the good news is neutrals are often processed as positives. So say as many as you can, because I know you're going to have negatives.
Well, and it's good to remind yourself, like, it's all in the little things. There don't have to be these big thank yous. It's all in the day-to-day little things. Thank you for, being available so I could FaceTime the kid. Thank you for calling. Like, just the little life things that
maybe don't say like, thank you for not being a total blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That doesn't count.
That's not what we're talking about. Well, Gabrielle, it's been so fun. Thank you so much. There's been
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a wealth of information in here, and I'm sure I will be knocking at your door again to have you back on, but I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. And please go to GabrielleHartley.com or Gabrielle@GabrielleHartley.com and look at the Better Apart method. See if it's something for you that you can grow from, that you can, just become a better you from being better apart. But like, you should be a better you doing a Better Apart method. And so see if it's for you, whether it's personal or professional. Sounds like there is something in it. I believe there's a lot in what she has to say. And if at the very least, pick up her book, The Better Apart. So thank you, Gabrielle, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so
much. All right,
much.
take care. Bye-bye.